Thank you for the opportunity to do this. Great to see so many people joining us for this event from all over the place. I was looking at the chat and I saw Iraq, Pakistan, South Africa. Please put where you're from and where you're joining us today in the chat. It's great to see so many people here. We are going to be presenting, as Maryam said, about ideas to articles today. So we're going to give you a bit of a practical guide for early career researchers, and we will leave lots of time for questions. So do save up those questions. We're here to help. We certainly hope that this will be the first in a series of events that we do together, Sidetrain with the Asian Council of Science Editors, helping researchers with your path to publication journey. And we've got webinars, we've got training events, we've got all kinds of content that takes people all the way round this academic publishing cycle. So from ideas to funding, to developing the research itself, selecting a journal, which we're going to talk about today, very, very important, article writing, submission, of course, peer review, and all the way around to publication. I like to think of this cycle as something like a hamster wheel, because as researchers, we spend all of our time going round and around and around this cycle with different aspects of our research. But let's begin this event today. I know that we have many young researchers, many up-and-coming researchers joining us for this event. Just have a think about why it is you want to get your next paper published, because this is very important. At early career stages, you will need to get your research published in order to get your master's or get your PhD. At many universities around the world, getting a publication in a Scopus Q1 or Q2 SCI journal is a key requirement for getting your PhD or master's. But later in your career, as you develop later in your career, it becomes more important to get published for other reasons, like to get promoted or indeed to get funding. So do have a think about your motivations for publishing at the start of the process. And of course, when we send research papers in to academic journals, which we'll talk about the process of in a moment, you are going to get considered by desk editors. There's going to be a process that takes place that we like to call editorial triage. It's a bit like getting hit by a bus and getting rushed off to the hospital. You can probably hear an ambulance siren in the background as I give this presentation. Today, you need to think about your research and its fit with a target journal. And think about editors. The Asian Council of Science Editors has more than 300 journal editors, like thousands of journal editors. Maryam will correct my numbers a little bit later. But people who are going to assess your paper for potential publication. So they're going to think, does this article fit with the journal scope? Does it have a clear message? Is it original? Is it important? Is it true? And is it relevant for our readers? As we're going to talk about in our event today, sell yourself to get through triage and give your paper the best possible chance of eventual acceptance. And so for this process, I use a photograph of my grandmother. This is a real photograph of my granny here on the right-hand side of the slide. How are you going to explain the message of your research to somebody like your grandmother or a bus driver who does not understand anything about the research that you're doing? Think about simple messaging of your research as you get started with the publication process, because having a simple, easy to understand, easy to transmit message is key to your publication success. If editors at journals around the world can't work out your single take-home message, what it is that you want people to get out of the reading experience when they have your paper in front of them, researchers, editors, peer reviewers, they're going to reject your paper. And editors will also reject your work if you're not able to convince them that the study is important. They're going to think, if I'm interested, my readers will be as well. So messaging, very important first stage of your article writing process. You're going to prepare to write. Think about the original nature of your research, the story, the message. We always like to say in our webinar events, before you begin to write, do think about your message, the audience, and that's the target journal that you're going to send the paper to, and the structure of the writing. Have in mind 3 things before you begin to write: your message, your audience, and the structure of the writing. So as you develop a research project and you're ready to start writing it up for publication, these 3 elements are absolutely key. Having a good story, being able to assemble your research takeaway message in 1 or 2 sentences at the start of the writing process will really, really help you to be effective with the writing process. Are key elements in career research, PhD students, as academics beginning the journey to write a research paper, to have in mind. Choose your topic, identify your audience, the purpose of the research publication, and gather all of those supporting details. And of course, we're here with the Asian Council of Science Editors with events like this to help, to provide training, to provide support for researchers thinking about putting a research article together. And we're going to ask you in a minute, like, what subject areas are you in? What areas of study are you taking? Are you participating in as research? But the general structure of a research article tends to look a bit like this. We're all familiar with this famous IMRAD, academic article structure: introduction, methods, results, and discussion in the second half of the writing, with the title, the abstract, and the keywords at the top. These are key elements that you need to think about before beginning to write the rest of the article. Of course, you will put together your article title, abstract, and keywords at the end, but you do need to have some thoughts about what these elements will be at the beginning of the writing process, as we look here at the general structure of a research article. I'm a huge fan of stories by Agatha Christie and other detective stories, Sherlock Holmes, films, movies, things like that. You always need a structure. In any piece of creative writing, in any format, you need to take your readers with you on a journey. Readers who, by the way, in English language academic article writing are almost 90% non-native speakers, because most of the research being done around the world is being done in non-native English-speaking countries. Readers need to know throughout an article where they've come from, where they are now, and where they're going. A plot is needed. A research article is like a story, and so let's keep that in mind as well. You are going to put a piece of research together that stands out, that goes to a great journal. 2 million research articles were published around the world in English in STM journals last year. 2 million, 30,000 just last month in medical and health sciences alone. You've got to pick a fantastic journal for your next article to make sure that you get seen, that your work is visible. Journal selection at the beginning of the writing process, of the article publication process, is absolutely key. We've talked about those 3 elements to have in mind before you start: message, audience, and structure. But what about journal selection? Journal selection is your audience. It gives you the structure for the rest of the writing. So we do encourage you to think carefully about where you're going to submit that fantastic piece of research that you've thought about the message for. You're ready to write that cover letter. You're ready to argue and explain to your grandmother, to the bus driver, to the journal editor, why this piece of research is so important and should be published in this journal. But this is really key. Finding a good journal speeds up your article publication, maximizes the impact of your paper, and also it helps with the detection of fake journals. And that's another topic for another day, but something that we'd love to come back and talk about in more detail. Many researchers around the world struggle to identify a good journal. And when's the best time to do this? Well, the best time to select the journal for your research article that you're about to write up for publication is when it's before you start to write. Message, audience, and structure. These three key elements of writing should be done before you begin. So you do need a journal in mind before beginning the writing process. Very, very important. Many successful academics around the world, they don't start writing until they've picked a target journal. And the reason for this, of course, is that every journal is different. Scope, audience, length, the kind of article that you might write, letters, rapid communications. You will learn as you develop your career and experience to self-evaluate your research and select fantastic journals in which to publish your research. But at early career stages, we're here to help. So just ask us if you have questions about any journals. Is it a predatory journal? Is this a good choice for my research? Reasons to choose a journal early include an understanding of the readership. You'll get to know who's in the audience for your next publication. Message, audience, and structure are those key elements that you need to have in mind before you begin to write. Readership, the disciplines and topics, and the type of articles. Also, picking a journal before you start to write helps you understand what you need to do and what you need to put into the different sections of that research article, the peer review process, the formatting, the word limits, even things like copyright, and even small things like, will I be writing in UK English or American English, for example. So choosing a journal at the beginning of the publication process is a great idea. If you forget everything else that we talk about in this event today, do keep in mind those three elements to have in mind, to think about before you begin to write. Message, audience, and structure are key elements for success in the publication process. As it says here on my slide, three elements: message, audience, and structure. And we are here to help you build a mentorship group. The Asian Council of Science Editors is your mentorship group to help you with difficult problems in the publication process. Writing, journal selection, suggesting peer reviewers, making sure that international colleagues are aware of you and your research. And we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail a bit later. But we do recommend that in all cases, when you're thinking about where to send your next research article for publication, write to editors. You've got that message. You know what the takeaway is from the research that you're going to do. You know what that is. You know what the key message of your research is. Write pre-submission inquiries to journals. Everybody has a list of target journals where you would like to publish your work. But write to editors. Editors, as Maryam will tell you, as members of the Asian Council of Science Editors will attest, they're not that scary. They're great people. You can talk to them. Find out by writing to editors pre-submission inquiries, asking them, would my paper be suitable for publication in your journal? There's no limit to the number of pre-submission inquiries that you can make to different journals. And this is a great way to get positive feedback from editors and get a potential target journal lined up. Thinking, though, about which journal to pick, here are a number of other factors that researchers do tend to have in mind when thinking about a target journal. Its impact factor, its reputation, its reach within the field, and whether or not it's open access. Many examples of journals from around the world, different disciplines, that don't necessarily have fantastic impact factors, but have great reputations within individual fields. So these are the kinds of things that researchers think about when picking a journal. Impact factor, reputation, reach within the field, and accessibility, open access. Again, if you have any questions about any of these issues, do get in touch with us and we'll have lots and lots of time in a moment for Q&A. I would say selecting a journal, aim high, choose appropriately, and we're here to help you sell and manage your submission to that target journal. It's a tricky part of the research process, but perhaps the most important component of all, finding a great journal for your next research article. How fast will it be? Will it be speedy? What will the reach and readership be of my next journal? And will it have a decent impact factor publishing process? And one of the big questions that researchers, especially young researchers around the world, do tend to have is the question of open access. Open access publishing, in theory, it's great. This ensures that everybody can access your work, all of the data, all of the results, the conclusions, and sometimes even peer review are open and accessible to everybody. It's a huge thing. Open access is fantastic. We saw a massive rise in the number of articles being pre-printed, being published open access during the pandemic, for example, and we wouldn't be where we are now with the pandemic, no problem, if we hadn't had access to early stage research, pre-printed and published open access during that time. But to be clear, there are two main models that publishers use for open access. Either gold, where all of the contents is immediately published online, final version published online, accessible to everybody. That's gold open access, but there's often a fee for this. Many journals, many publishers charge what we call an article processing charge for this to happen. Gold open access. Whereas in green, in the traditional model, you publish your paper in a journal that would be putting that behind a paywall, a subscription journal, but you can put a late stage version of the research, the final accepted Word document, for example, onto your own website or an institutional repository or a site like Academia or ResearchGate or one of the many online academic repositories. The paper is still published behind that paywall on the publisher's website, but you are providing access to a late stage version to everybody. These are the main models of open access. And of course, we're happy to talk more about these. We'll have lots of time in our Q&A in just 5 to 10 minutes from now. You can ask us anything. But as I mentioned already, really, 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 really important to make those pre-submission inquiries to journals. Write to editors, reach out to them. We'll give you a template at the end of our event today so that you can do this more easily. Speed up the process by sending those pre-submission inquiries. Write to editors. There's no limit to the number of editors that you can write to, 20, 30, 40. You can only submit your paper to one journal at the end of the day, but do make lots of pre-submission inquiries. This helps get an editor interested in your work. They may write back with a positive, yes, please send your paper to our journal. This is a great way to speed up the publication process. So do keep it in mind. Do think about that as you think about your message, the message of your research, as well as the impact that your work is likely to make. The different kinds of impact that we often talk about are academic as well as economic and societal. And most researchers think just about the academic impact, the impact factor, the H index of their work, but do think as well about the difference that your work is going to make to the lives of ordinary people, because of course we see a big difference in coverage in impact factor journals depending upon discipline. Here you can see the percentage coverage of different disciplines in Scopus in many fields. It's just not the same. It's just not so easy to get your work published in a fantastic journal with a decent impact factor. And that, I'm sure, is something else that we'll talk about in detail in just a moment. As you plan your research, put those outputs online during the project. on publication and on an ongoing basis. Impact. Building impact with your research is a journey. It's an ongoing process. It starts way before you put the paper together. And of course, you need to know those promotional channels, different regions, different subjects, using different promotional channels for research. But where are the researchers in your field spending their time? How are you going to connect with other like-minded researchers in your subject area? Very, very, very well worth knowing about as well. I wanted to spend just the last few minutes of this presentation component of the webinar today talking a little bit about titles and abstracts, because these are key elements of the writing process. And as we mentioned earlier, they perform quite a different function in terms of searchability and discoverability to the rest of the main body text. And unfortunately, many researchers do not put the time and energy required into writing fantastic, effective, discoverable titles and abstracts. What makes a great title? Well, it should contain the fewest possible words to adequately describe the contents of your paper. Keep it short. The main issue, the subject, accurate, unambiguous, specific, and complete. No infrequently used abbreviations. Above all, the purpose of a great title, keep it short. It's to attract readers, to get people interested in reading your paper. You want people to think, that's a really interesting article title. I want to read more. It's got to be concise. The most important words related to the topic. Entice the reader without giving away the punchline, but not over sensational. I see this in my own field all the time. Paleontology, magnificent, marvelous, fantastic, gigantic, superfluous. Over sensational words have no place in academic writing. So keep your title short. Less than 7 words is actually the optimal length for an academic article title in order to get the maximum number of citations. Research has shown. Here we've got some actual examples, just a few from some real papers, nice and short. You may wish, of course, as in this example, to use what we call an interrogative or a question-based title. If this title is funny, will you cite me? Make your title into a question. Depending upon the publisher, they may like it more or less, but this is another great way to get people interested in reading your study. Or use a colon. Say something general, put in a colon, say something specific. Keep those different sections of the title as short and as effective as possible. And I'm sure we'll be back with longer presentations on the structure, the different parts, the templates that we have to present for academic article writing. But for now, let's talk very briefly about your abstract. So important. A good quality abstract has to be honest and precise. It's got to stand alone, because often, as you know, this is all other people are going to read, especially peer reviewers and maybe even editors. No technical jargon, short and specific, and citing no references. The quality of your abstract is going to inform that editor's decision what to do next with the paper, whether to send it out for peer review or not. Many journals base their decisions on what to do with research articles on the abstract alone. And sadly, I'm sure you've been in this position. Many authors write their abstracts in a rush, almost as an afterthought. This has to be a concise piece of writing with a very message, accurately reflecting the full text of the research article. You can do it easily if down these 4 questions here. The 4 question technique for writing academic texts. Why did you read? What did you do? What did you find? And what did you conclude? Write down these 4 questions and then answer them with information from your own research. Why did you do the study? Answer that. What did you do? You answer that. What did you find? You answer that. And what did you conclude? In sequence, in structure. There's the structure. There's that structure of the academic writing that we talked about before. These 4 questions, by the way, form the basis of a well-written academic article in general? These 4 questions, having clear, effective answers to these, will help you to build the introduction, the methods, the results, and the discussion and conclusion of your next academic article. But give it a go for abstract writing. It's a great technique. You can build a conference abstract. You can build an academic article abstract easily using this technique. Keeping in mind, of course, those 3 elements that I talked about at the beginning. What do you need to know before you start to write? You need a message. You need to know your audience. That's your target journal. And you need to know the structure of the writing, which of course comes from the target journal. Readers need to know throughout the paper where they've come from, where they are now, and where they are going. You've seen this slide before, but it's key. A plot, a structure to your academic article is absolutely critical. So we are here, and in a moment there'll be lots of time for Q&A, feedback and questions. Your topic. Identify your audience, your purpose, and gather those supporting details. What we're going to be doing with the Asian Council of Science Editors is providing a roadmap now for publication success, helping you to prepare effectively, selling yourself to journals, as we talked about a little bit earlier, having a great and clear and effective structure, and of course, as well, effective writing, learning those tricks and techniques for effective English language writing to make sure your work has the best possible chance of acceptance in a leading international journal. So, before I pass the baton back to dear Maryam for the Q&A, we have talked about journal selection, maximizing your impact, and title and abstract writing. Quickly, a few key elements to have in mind as an early career researcher getting started with the writing and publication process, tricks and techniques for you. And the point of all of this training, the point of all of this is to help you become more effective as a writing and publishing academic. And so with that, I will pass things back over to Maryam and say thank you for listening. Now it's time for the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Gareth, for such an informative presentation. And I would say the 30 minutes presentation, it's not enough. Just let me put the pin for recording, and accordingly,
I can keep going longer if you like, or if you want me to.
stop the screen share and engage with the audience. And meanwhile, I will set the screen for recording and Q&A. Please add your questions in the chat box so that we can check with Gareth for that. Just a minute. Let me add a pin. All right.
And do let us know topics that you'd like to hear in the future, colleagues. Like if there's something in particular that you would like a presentation on in the future that you're particularly struggling with, do let us know in the chat, okay?
Yes, so Gareth, starting with the questions, just a minute. So the first question from Chatbox, how we identify best journal for our research, because there are many fake journals in market which have high impact factor.
Yeah, this is a really, really good question. How to identify the best journal for your research? There are many journals in the market, many of which have high impact factors. My best advice for researchers doing this and selecting journals for their early career research papers is to select or make a list of key researchers in your field, in your subject area, working around the world, Germany, United States, I don't know, like Australia, like India, Pakistan, South Africa, key leading researchers, and then look at their websites, look at their publication lists and see where they are publishing their papers. And this will give you a good insight into where leading researchers in your field are publishing their work. That helps initially.
Yes. So I would request the participants to please carefully monitor your microphone so that we avoid disruption for Gareth while answering the questions. So moving forward towards the next one, I would like to take an on-air question. Would anyone like to go with on-air question? Lai or Hen, what's your question?
Yeah, thank you so much, Maryam, and thank you so much, Dr. Gareth. It's my second time to join the webinar presented by Dr. Gareth. I'm so excited, and especially to be part of Asian Council of Science Editors. It is amazing. I can say, I learned a lot from today's webinar. I noticed 2 points. We need to start searching for the journal even before we start writing the manuscript. I haven't heard about that before. It has changed my mind. And another point that I heard from Dr. Garrett was about keeping the title as short as possible. It can be less than 7 words. So I have two quick questions for you, Dr. Garrett. The first question, when we talk about the title, we need to think about 2 points, cause and effect. But the title you presented to us was quite short, and I saw only the cause. I did not see the effect. And if we set the title like that to the journal, our paper, our manuscript can be rejected. It is my first question. And I will start with a new one quickly. Another question is about uh, when early career researchers want to publish their papers, they may hesitate to start because they start writing early and they are not so sure about the quality of their manuscript. So, what is your suggestion for them to look for low or medium impact factor journals that are good enough? Do you know the link or the website from which we can search low impact or medium impact factor journals that are good enough for early career researchers? Once again, thank you. And it's my pleasure to be part of the webinar even in the future. Thank you.
Wow, that's great. Thank you, Laihor. That's great and great to meet you. And thank you for your questions. I mean, first of all, let's talk about titles. You're quite right. Many journals, well, not many, but some journals will ask for you to put, like, as you put it, like a cause and effect into the title. This is what we would call a declarative title, where you're giving the reader all of the information about the study and its outcomes. So in many fields, for example, medical research, that is not something that journals will encourage. They would like you to not say, my drug is the cure for cancer, right, in the title, but would rather, put information that encourages doctors, encourages researchers to actually read the study. So we actually see across journals around the world that more journals are encouraging researchers to be non-declarative, as we call it, in their research article titles. So not putting the effect and the cause together in the same title. So it's a great question. My point with this presentation was that we see loads of titles that are just confusing, too many words, too difficult to understand. Do keep your article title as short as possible and make it interesting. You've got your message, Laihor. You know, like what the study is about, what the takeaway is going to be. You can talk about that in the title. So people are going to think, that's a really interesting study. I want to read more. On the second of your questions about where to go to find a journal, this is a great question. At the moment, there is not a single place where you can go to search all journals to find a good one. The only tool that we know about that is publisher agnostic, that's independent of, called the EDANT Journal Selector tool. And if someone's listening and is able to quickly Google and put that link into the chat, that would be much appreciated. Maria, I know you're in the room as well. Like, Journal Selector tool is the only one that we currently know about that's not a publisher tool. Also, have a look at the DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals, doaj.org. Think, check, submit.org is another fantastic resource to understand good journals versus predatory journals. Laihor, thank you for your question, and I hope you're having a good afternoon. Maryam.
Very brief.
Thank you. Thank you. It's quite clear for me, Dr. Gareth. And thank you, Maryam. Yeah. Thank you, Maryam.
So moving towards the next question, is there a site that gives information about the good quality journals without payment charges? Nowadays, many journals are paid and you can easily publish it by paying money.
Another great question. You will not have to pay for publication if you choose a traditional subscription journal. Okay. And there are many, many, many to choose from, many with excellent impact factors. In fact, these kinds of journals tend to have the higher impact factors because they've been around for a lot longer. So if you're going for a subscription journal, Nature, Science, for example, are examples of subscription journals. You will not have to pay for publication, but not everybody around the world will have access to the final published version. Open access publishing, as we talked about today, that's where it comes in. That's where those dreaded APCs often come into play. But you can go again. You can go again on the directory of open access journals, doaj.org, and there you can search by publication fee. You can find. Oh, my ears are getting cleaned out today. You can find a journal on the DOAJ that's open access and carries no publication fees. So I do recommend that website to everybody listening to the webinar today. Maryam?
Perfect. So moving towards the next question. Before going to the chat question, I would like to see if anyone would like to go with on your question.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello, Mary.
Can you raise the hand to identify which attendee want to raise the question? Use raise hand to go with question. All right. Meanwhile, Gareth, would you like to go with one chat question? As a researcher from low-income country, Nigeria, high APCs that's being charged by prestigious journal is a concern. How can I publish without paying APC given the financial situation of researcher from low-income countries?
Yeah, that's a great question. Very, very common question. And I would refer you to the answer to the question just before. I mean, if you pick a journal that is a subscription journal, then you don't have to pay. And 2/3 of the journals out there in the world are subscription journals. Okay, so that's my first point to make on that. If you're going to publish your work in a subscription journal, a traditional journal, the publisher will not charge you any publication fees. But the published paper, the final published paper, will not be accessible to everybody because not everybody, their universities, even at the national level, have access to that content. So let's say you publish in a Springer Nature journal, just picking one of the big 4 publishers. If it's a subscription journal, you won't have to pay, but not everybody's going to have access. That's one point to make on that. So from a low-income country, there are many journals that you can pick for your publications that do not have any publication fees. They are traditional journals and also diamond open access journals, but we'll come on to those in a moment. If you go for an open access journal, then very often you do have to pay, or your institution or funding agency is expected to pay an article processing charge. It sucks. Unfortunately, this is the business model of the publishers, but do have a look again at the doaj.org. Maria's also posted the Edance journal selector into the chat. These are resources for you to find journals where you can publish if you wish an access, and you don't, but if you wish, open access without or with minimal article processing charges. I would also say, final point, if you're a PhD student or an early career researcher and you're targeting a journal with an article processing charge, write to the editor and tell the editor that you are an early career researcher, because very often they'll give you a discount and or waive that fee as well. And the same is often the case, by the way, if you tell them that you're coming from X, Y, and Z country, because many publishers scale their article processing charges on an OABLE basis, OABLE. So different countries are more or less able to pay the fee. So be communicative with the editor, talk to the editor. If you've decided that you really, really want to publish a paper in, let's say, PLOS biology, which is going to have an APC of $1,500, talk to the editor. They may discount or they may waive it altogether. So thanks for that question.
Next, I will go with one on-air question. Dr. Abimbola, what's your question? Please keep it as short as possible so that we can cover more.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Maryam. I think this was by far a very, very exhilarating discussion. I learned so many things. So straight to my question. My question is about how editors evaluate methodological novelty versus how they evaluate the rigor of the methodology. So to put this question in context, let me give an example to help clarify what I'm asking exactly. So I'm currently working on computational pipelines to analyze genomic signatures associated with Clostridium difficile pathogenicity. So in my case, right, the analytical approach are quite new. They are fairly novel. So we leverage things like machine learning techniques that aren't exactly standardized yet in microbiome research. So of course, the results are promising, but I've been thinking about how editors would evaluate this kind of work. So again, my question is, how can we balance methodological novelty, especially from new computational pipelines like this, against the need for rigor and reproducibility? Thank you.
That's an excellent, fantastic question. So when you submit your paper to the journal, you will need to have a great, well-written cover letter, Ebenezer, that explains to the editor why your work is important and why it's a step forward, potentially a paradigm shift based on what's been previously done in the field. If you're not just stepping forward gradually, if the research is not just like an incremental step forward, which by the way are much easier kinds of papers to get published, especially from a methodological perspective, but you need to explain like just what you've said in your question, in your cover letter to the editor. You may be seeing differences here in what I'm presenting in the method section, and this is because A, B, and C, I'm doing something different. This is a step forward, an early stage set of research results that may lead to more in the future. And the method section, as you know, Ebenezer, the method section is the key part of the research paper in terms of surviving editorial triage, as we call it, and also peer review. So I would say as well, when you've written your method section, everybody, show it researchers in your department, in your field, other people that you know in the same area, and ask them, is there enough information here? Can you understand what I did? Can you reproduce what I did? Because that's the number one reason why papers get rejected. But, you know, you can just bulletproof the paper by showing your method section to other people before you make that submission. Great, fantastic question, and thank you so much for it.
Moving next
Well,
question.
thank you so much. I appreciate your exceptional professional acumen, Doctor.
Thank you, sir.
We have another person for on-air question, Dr. Sajjad. Are you around?
Thank you, Maryam. Thank you, Dr. Gareth. It was really impressive presentation, and we have learned a lot from this webinar presentation. So I have just a basic question regarding the language barrier of non-native English researchers. Like the language, UK language and USA language, which is feel really pressure and also create a drama for the non-native speaker, English speaker. Similarly, in the developing country, like the research, like the problem I have faced in the recent project. I was working on the flora of Pakistan. Uh, the techniques of DNA barcoding, which was done 20 to 25 years before in the developed country. So how can I publish by using these methods and methodologies to create my research articles with that methodologies? But the prestigious journal not ready to publish my work, that this work has already happened in the developed country. So for the developing country, this is a new works, a novel works. Of course, this is not for the developed country. For our country, this is a novel work or new work. So how can I publish this work in a prestigious journal?
Okay, another fantastic question. We're getting some great questions today, Maryam. It's really, really interesting. So, if you are doing a piece of research that reproduces something that's been done before in another part of the world, then you're going to struggle to get that work published in an international impact factor journal. But I think what the way to approach this, and I mean, I work a lot with researchers in Pakistan and Central Asia, like you are going to localize the research to a question that's of particular relevance to your area, to your local area, and that in that method becomes relevant to the particular question that you're addressing locally. I mean, that is one suggestion for you. Of course, if you are using old-fashioned research methods, then journals are going to come back to you and say, well, now we're using, X, Y, and Z methods. There has to be a reason why you're using a method from a number of years ago. And that, I think, is the key question to ask yourself and your research team. Like, rather than, trying to repeat research that's been done before in other parts of the world, let's try to develop new questions, but we can certainly use older research methods to address new questions. I'm not sure if that helps, but I would be fascinated to connect with you after this webinar and talk more about how we can help you to solve this particular problem. But thank you for that question.
So how can we solve the language barrier about in our native speaker?
Yeah, well, that's another great question. I mean, we are now in the age of AI, right? And everybody's using all different kind. I mean, and I work in China a lot, like with researchers often who can't speak any English, but are still publishing their work in very good English. I mean, now we see, as we say in English, this big leveling of the playing field internationally. And I think, my answer to that would be, let's help you to find some tools that you can use, sir, to improve your language with AI. I mean, maybe that can be our next ACSE webinar presentation with Maryam and the team.
Thank you.
Exactly. So moving quickly towards the next question. GN, if you are around, I would like to have you with the next question. You have write a lengthy question in chat box. Would you like to go on air with the question? GN? Let me just see. All right, so she wrote that some school requires the students to publish research before graduating, but they're facing a challenge with publication timelines. Many journals take months for acceptance, and with graduation approaching, they need to find options for speedier publication that are also more affordable than typical Scopus index journals. Do you have any recommendation for journals or strategies to achieve this without compromising on the publication's validity requirement?
Oh, it's another fantastic question and another very common issue that researchers face. Of course, if you need to graduate, you need to get your paper published. But as editors, and Maryam and the team will attest to this, like we get inquiries all the researchers asking us about the status of the paper. Do write to editors, because you shouldn't be waiting a long time to get back comments. You should be getting your peer review comments back within 6 to 8 weeks. And then the paper should be published in a timely manner after that. So I think the problem often here is that researchers feel that they can't communicate with editors. They can't just get in touch with editors and ask them questions about the status of their articles. So, journals may take a long time, but I would say as well, don't wait, get in touch, communicate, and talk to the journal editor. 6 to 8 weeks is a good rule of thumb. If you haven't heard back your peer review comments after that, right? We're here to help. We can draft. We're here to help. We can help you draft messages as well to help you.
All right, moving towards the next one. What factors should I consider when I choose a publisher? Their values, impact factor, targeted audience, editing process.
Well, I mean, this is a very personal question for you as a researcher. I mean, what's the most important factor for you? I mean, in some countries, you have to publish in a Q1 or Q2 journal to get your PhD. So for many researchers, that's the most important consideration, that the journal is in Scopus Q1 or Q2. Other researchers, different career stages, different regions care mostly about speed, In the United States, researchers are not assessed so much on the impact of their publications, the impact factor, but on the numbers of publications. So that a different consideration. So in the great question, I would turn it back to you and say, what's most important to you in terms of picking a journal? It's a very, very personal choice. But yeah, I mean, I hope that some of the content, some of the slides, some of the information that we've shared today, Maria's been posting some other links and resources in the chat, are helpful with these kinds of questions. Thank you.
Perfect. So do we have another on-air question before we go with wrap up, or a few more chat questions? Do anyone have any question?
Hello.
Yes. I think there's some connection issue. So let me just go with one quick question. With your experience, Gareth, what's the most common mistake you see the first-time authors make when submitting their work?
Wow, what's the most common mistake that first-time authors make when submitting their work? I would say overcomplicating the writing process, and try to pick a journal. Try to have a journal in mind before you start to write, because many researchers, they do the work, they know what the message is, they know what the takeaway is from the research, they know what the significance is, they then write up the paper, and that takes a long time because it's open-ended. They don't have a target in mind and start to think, I've got this 8,000 word manuscript, where am I going to submit it for publication? That is, I think, the wrong way round. And I would say that's one of the most common mistakes. It's not a mistake, though. I mean, people are just not helped with this process to the extent that many of us feel that they should be. So yeah, I mean, good luck and best wishes, and get in touch if you need anything. We're always here to help with the Asian Council of Science Editors, SciTrain, Maryam, myself, Maria. We're always here to help. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn, get in touch anytime. We're always happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, another question in chat regarding review papers. What would be your suggestions to new writers, how one should outline a topic?
Okay, this is another fantastic question. I'm blown away by the quality of questions from this event today. First thing to say about review papers, ladies and gentlemen, review papers are usually invited by editors, okay? So it's very difficult to get a review paper published if you write one and then try to send it to a journal, okay? Do not start a review paper until you have a journal in mind. And indeed, you will need to get an editor interested in publishing a review paper. It's not the same thing as a literature review. A review paper in a peer-reviewed journal is an overview of a topic of interest, a question, a state of the art, or a summary of like research up to now on a particular hot topic, they're almost always invited by editors. So if you have a good idea for a review paper, which of course you may very well have, write to journal editors and pitch the idea to the journal editors, and then get a positive response. Get the Journal of Tropical Medicine to say, I'd love to have you write that review paper before you start to write it. So that's my advice on review papers. There's a big misconception out there around the world about this, because many people think that a literature review can be published as a review paper, and that is not the case. So sorry for the shouting and screaming, but hopefully that helps answer that question.
Yes, connecting to this, Gareth, we have seen like a lot of papers. I would say if there are 80% of research paper, there would be like 20 or 30% review papers. If we go with the standard format that it's editor invited, I don't see it practical. So how are things going on regarding the review papers? Do the editors for the publishing big layer, medium layer, do they have this sort of time to connect with the researchers or authors and guide them that this is what we want as review paper? Or is it going other way around?
Both ways. I mean, you can write to a journal. If you have an idea for a review paper, reach out to journals. The point I'm making is writing one from the ground up and then trying to find a journal for it is even harder than an original piece of research up as a paper from the ground up and then trying to find a journal. Most journals publish, as you say, Maryam, 10-20% of their content will be review papers. There are journals that publish only review papers, annual reviews being a famous example, but they are usually overall topics, context setting pieces of writing, and they want usually to invite like leading researchers in the field. So it's very difficult for a young researcher to write and publish a review paper. If we have like a correct understanding the review paper actually is. But again, like if you have questions, just get in touch. We're always here to help. We love to help researchers with questions all the time.
Right, there's one last question that comes like a little bit out of context. As a new researcher or a PhD student, while preparing a research proposal, what key points do we need to consider of published paper journal from a literature review point of view?
Okay, so yeah, writing a research proposal. I mean, I would refer you in this case to a number of AI tools that can help you to do this, to make a mind map of what's currently being done in your field, and then look at future research directions. Litmaps is one great tool. Research Rabbit is another great tool that will help you to understand the body of literature that's already been published in your area, and then come up with ideas for future research directions. Doing this, research proposals, gap analysis, like coming up with a good research question, is one key area where AI is really helping researchers around the world. So yeah, that would be my answer to that one. Great question. And again, Maryam, it's fantastic. The question session have been amazing.
Our last webinar at this time, there is like loads and loads of questions. We received like almost 50 plus questions pre-submission of this webinar and then in the chat box as well. So I will like to go with one last question before we wrap up. How much does your cover letter matters in the submission process? Any do's or don'ts?
How much does your submission matter in the submission process, your cover letter? It's hugely, hugely, hugely important. Editors will read it. Don't make the mistake of not writing one. Don't make the mistake of writing a boring one. Make sure you tell the editor why your work is important. What's the message? That's why we talked about messaging in this presentation earlier. Why the work is important for this journal. Mention the journal. Editors love it when you talk about their journals, but you must explain why the work is important and interesting to that journal. And don't forget to give some suggestions for peer reviewers as well. But yeah, basically, I can't overstate the importance of a well-written, effective cover letter, because the title, the abstract, and the cover letter, probably that's all the editor's going to read before making a decision about what to do with your study. Another fantastic question.
For the wrap-up side, I would say a big thanks to Gareth for joining us today and for walking us through such a critical part that every researcher's journey have, and it's a must part. I'm sure that many of us here feel a little less overwhelmed, I would say a little more informed. To all of the participants who are joining us today, thank you for being a part of this webinar. We hope that today it was not just informative, but a bit of confidence and momentum for you as well to move forward with your first, or I would say the next submission. If you have any question or would like to connect further, feel free to follow ACSE for updates, our upcoming trainings, and expert resources tailored specially to support your publishing journey. So until next time, happy writing and stay curious. If you have any question or you have any suggestion for next webinar, feel free to write us. And if you are not a member of ACSE, do feel free to join us and stay tuned for next webinar. See you all in another episode. Thank you so much, Gareth, for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you, Maryam.